So I wanted to introduce my YouTube channel. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm up in Northern Ontario. We bought this property just over 3 years ago, and at the time I kind of had the idea that the way things were kind of changing with the property that we bought is we did not originally buy this property to build an off-grid cottage or cabin. Once we started building it though, I kind of thought this would be, I should videotape this. I'm a second generation home builder from Southern Ontario. My father learned trades and learned a lot in Germany when he was in Germany, and then I learned a lot of stuff from him. So it was, I don't know, I wanted to give it to my children, and also I've really found out a lot about being off grid from watching other YouTube channels, and I spent a lot of time getting ideas and that sort of thing. So I just thought first I wanted to record this for my family, and then I kind of thought, well, there's probably other people out there that could be helped by this sort of thing. So here I am. So we, like I said, we bought this just over 3 years ago, and when we were purchasing it, I had called Hydro up and asked Hydro that, like, the property had a road in, which was really important. The other thing that was really important to me was, being a retired home builder, that it was in an unincorporated township, so there's no building department here. You still have to build to the Ontario Building Code. And to me, the old building code that I had back in the 70s is like a Bible to me. It's like, that's the building code. And a lot of the new stuff that's come out since then is just, a lot of it's just nonsensical. So to me, it was really important that I did not have to deal with somebody that didn't know nearly as much as I did about building homes. We did not buy this to build off grid. We bought it because, like I said, unincorporated township, Northern Ontario, beautiful lake. It's kind of a river and lake system combined. So when we were purchasing the property, I tried to get a price for Hydro to the property, and I was given a price of $45,000, which just kind of knocked me off of my chair, and I thought, okay, that's too much. Now, if my neighbors here, the other people that live here, all got Hydro, it could have gone down to 25, but even $25,000 of that, well, I can buy a really good solar system for that. And so the idea about building off grid kind of was formed. Okay, what do we do? What kind of steps? I hadn't planned on it, but it was, it's the sort of thing that fell into our laps. And so the next things were to try and figure out the best way to do it. Now, I have a few other little film clips that I filmed earlier that I'm going to probably add to this, but so we kind of decided we'd put a trailer here first, and the trailer was much too cold. She's going to lose her ball into a hole. No, Bruni, no. She does that because she knows, and I'll go get it for her. And don't bump the camera. Drop it. She's going to knock the camera over. Anyways, oh, she didn't. Yeah, so we got the property not with no idea building off off-grid. And the off-grid kind of came about. So we moved the trailer to the property first, and realized very quickly that the trailer was going to be too cold. It was like September already, and we were already freezing. There she is, knocking my camera again. Life of the dog. We couldn't take her fishing this morning because she makes too much noise, because she thinks that she should be jumping out of the boat and going after the lures, and gets all upset about it, makes lots of noise. So originally we were going to, we can see this here, we were going to build a cottage around where I've got the ATV there, kind of close to the water, and we still may. But what happened was, it got too cold, and we kind of realized, okay, we're going to have to build a cabin. So we decided that we would build a cabin at the spot where we're going to put the trailer. It was just more convenient. Plus, building down here by the water, it had a lot of elevation problems. So I'll try, and if you can see the cabin up there behind me, hopefully you can see that. So yeah, we decided to build a cabin, and we realized when we built the cabin it would need a basement, because we realized we had to store rainwater, because pumping from the lake down here up there was going to be really difficult. We needed like a 220 volt pump, and then if you're worried about running off grid, then you're not getting a lot of sun in the fall and that. So then, you come up here and your batteries are low, and you don't have enough power to pump water up from the lake. So all these things kind of were bridges that we had to cover as we crossed them, as we kind of started thinking about what we were going to do here. So we realized we had to build with very high insulation, much more than we would use in the city, because in the city you have natural gas to your property, and you get a high efficiency furnace, and your natural gas, your heating costs are, I have a 3,000 square foot house, with the basement finished, it's more like 4,500 square feet finished in the house, and our highest heating bill is like, in the winter, is like $140 for 1 month, $130. So there's no incentive there to insulate your house very well. As opposed to up here, there's a really good incentive to heat your house very well, because you actually don't want it to freeze when you're not here, because you don't want the plumbing to freeze. You don't want other damage happening to it. So one of the things we realized early was we had to put in high insulation values, and then we framed the building for that specifically. We also realized that we had to collect rainwater, because coming from the lake up here, getting lake water was too high. So we have a rainwater collection system that I'll show. So to collect rainwater, you have to keep it insulated. It has to stay on the warm side. So what we did was we built a foundation. We kind of built the subfloor and then kind of scabbed a foundation around the outside. And then had that sprayed in with urethane foam afterwards, so that the basement's insulated, and we have a 1,000 liter IBC tank in the basement. And we are collecting rainwater from, we got kind of metal, higher quality eaves trough, filters for the eaves trough, and we in the end we're going to end up getting a one of those old-fashioned piston pumps for the basement, because they're more efficient than the jet pumps. Most people stop thinking about, like, when electricity is in abundance, you kind of don't, your mind goes somewhere else. And when it's not, then all of a sudden you have to start thinking of, okay, well, we can't pump water from the lake. We're going to put a hand pump in also, just in case we come up here and there's no electricity, so we can get water. Then, you know, we have our solar array and our batteries, which I have now already. And so your entire way of thinking has to be different. It's kind of like I grew up. We grew up on a farm. My dad built houses and he farmed at the same time for quite a few years. And we had well water. In the summers when we ran out of water, my dad would send us down into the well was in the basement. He'd send us down there with a couple of empty coffee cans and my brother and I in our underwear, and then he would send a pail down and we would dig the sand out of there until we hit water again. That's our for sewage, or the top of our septic collapsed and the smell was horrible. It was just awful. I was never so happy, and our whole family was never so happy to get connected to city water and sewer. It felt so nice just to turn on the tap and not have to think about where the water was coming from. Flush the toilet and not have to think about what you were flushing down there. And now I've gone full circle again, and now I have to think about how much water I use. I have to think about what gets flushed down the toilet. So, like when you flush a toilet, if it's yellow on the toilet paper, you don't flush that down the toilet, because that's all stuff that will fill up your septic and your black water. That was another thing too, is we decided that we were going to treat our sewage differently. We were going to treat our black water separately from our gray water. Just because it doesn't make any sense to mix the water that comes from your shower to the water that when you go to the bathroom and do your big stuff, right? And then the other thing too is that if you have kitchen waste, you have grease in there and food particles. Well, it doesn't make any sense to mix that in with anything else either. So why not treat that separately? Like get a grease trap for that and a filter, so you strip out all the little food particles and everything. And that's easy to treat. That's easy just to let that sink and get cleaned out in the ground with sand and that. We found a person up here that empties so our trailer. It didn't take us very long to fill the tank up, just a week, and then it cost me $100 to have it pumped, and it still wasn't even clean. So I got an IBC tank, and it's 1,000 liters, and we fill that out and we get it pumped. It's still $100. It's still the same. And he has a license for a lagoon where he pumps it. So, I mean, if it gets pumped into a lagoon, that's really environmentally friendly, because there's no sewage treatment plant that has to handle it. It's the bacteria that's natural, that flies around in the air, gets in there, and the yeasts and everything that break it down, and the sun evaporates the water from the top of it. In other words, it just looks after itself. So that's a better way. And I have also looked at handling black water by aerating it, to try and get bacteria to break it down as much as possible, even before it leaves here. So there's all these things that you have to think about when you're off grid. And so I'm going to kind of make videos. I know it's years after. One of the problems I had, it's taken so long, is I have heart trouble. I have a rare heart disease, and it's kind of every once in a while I end up, in the hospital or something, or something happens, and so it puts us back. But then in another way, that's even another important reason for us for me to be videotaping this so that people can look at it and my kids can look at it and say, well, that's what he was trying to do, right? Or that's what he's doing. I mean, it'll always be there. The ideas I had years ago. It's just I kind of wish I would have started videotaping sooner, but I didn't. So yeah, I'm probably going to show some more videos about how we like our trailer and how kind of we came to the realization of things, and then I'm going to skip into maybe a little bit about the water treatment, but then I'm going to go into we get pine 1x8s for interior walls, or at least most of the interior walls in the cabin, and I'm going to videotape, show how we did the insulation to make sure we have a high R value in there, and it's not just the R value, it's the system of how you insulate. A lot of people just think throw a high R value at it and it's good, but no. This is another reason it's really important to be in an unorganized township, because if I had to follow the Ontario Building Code, I could not. Building off-grid would be not impossible, but would be extremely difficult. It's just, some of the rules are just plain stupid, which is another reason I wanted to be in an unincorporated township, just because I just couldn't, like putting a fan in an airtight house to blow 250 cubic feet of air out, and then I'd say to the guy, well, where does the air come from? Like the building inspector, and there's no answer, because it's dumb. It makes no sense. You can't do that. And then, you know, whatever happened to opening a window when you need fresh air? Did they treat everyone like they're a toddler and say, oh yeah, well, you're too stupid to open up a window, so we're going to have to give you this? But then they'd be too stupid to turn a switch on by the thermostat that turns the fan on that blows air out of your house at 250 cubic feet per minute. Did they never do the math to figure out how many cubic feet of air is actually in your house and how long it would take to suck all the air out of your house? And if you sucked all the air out of your house, what would happen? Well, the house would implode, you'd explode, but that's not possible. It can't happen. So what happened is your 250 CFM fan would stop drawing air after a while. It actually the motor starts speeding up because it doesn't have as much air resistance anymore, because the air pressure's down. Every little nook and cranny, every little pinhole in your house is going to start sucking air in like crazy. If you have that's one of the reasons you have to have a carbon monoxide detector when you have a wood fireplace, because they've come up with these stupid rules like this. And so what obviously you're going to have air coming down your chimney to feed your house air. And I could get on about putting an air-to-air heat exchanger in, but the problem is that dries the air out in your house. Also doesn't take account into plants, how plants clean the air in your house. How if you have the right kind of plants in your house, your air inside your house can be cleaner than the air outside of your house. So they kind of come out with these rules, like I said, like treating you like a toddler, like you're too stupid to open up the windows, like you're too stupid to go and, you know, like if people really concentrated on what kind of spider plants are really good, they clean the air, they put oxygen in the air. I'm kind of going on a rant here, but yeah, I really am glad that I can build off-grid. I use the Ontario Building Code, of course. You should never build without knowing what you're doing up here. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff I learned on YouTube, but mostly if people do like what I do, they should be either experienced or at least really study the Ontario Building Code, especially the old, if you can get a copy of the old one, because it gives you everything structurally that you need for a house. Things like, it tells you right in there, you can build with 2-foot centers if you're building with 2x6s for exterior walls. Well, that's a no-brainer. You build with 2-foot centers with 2x6s on exterior walls so you get more insulation in the wall, because wood doesn't insulate nearly as well as something like Roxul is what we used in the walls, which was R24 Roxul that fits in a 2x6 stud space. The wood doesn't insulate very well, and I did a bunch of other things that I'm going to explain in there. But like I said, if it would never pass a building inspection, but that's okay because I don't need it here. So I think I'm just going to end it here. My dog needs me to throw her ball for she there. See Bruni there? Kind of in the shadows. Okay, that's enough.